I'm really enjoying the process of creating a whole series of UV islands for my bear model here, but I've run into some pretty big challenges in certain areas of my UVs, and specifically on the head itself. If you look at the UVs that I've crafted for the head, let's just find them instead of our UV map. Here we go. There it is. It's all one gigantic UV island. It's been ironed flat. All of that three-dimensional information has been ironed flat into this shape here. Now on the surface, no pun intended, it looks to be okay for the most part. But keep in mind, we're going to be placing a two-dimensional texture. Let's pretend like a picture of like wood or something on the face of my bear, or fur on the face of the bear. How our UVs are created and their orientation and distribution inside of our UV space is going to have a direct impact on how that two-dimensional texture is going to be overlaid on top of the three-dimensional geometry in here. How we test this inside of Maya to see and understand and get a good visualization of this warping and distortions is right here with this checker pattern. It's a good place to start. Now, I'm going to put this down here, and you can see the problem unfolding in front of us. Look how the texture, the grid pattern, is stretching across the surface of my mesh. We want to minimize this stretching as much as we can. If we were to put a fur texture over here on the snout of my bear, it would be that one texture would be really stretched out on the snout, and then it would get kind of okay looking here, no stretching, and then it would get stretched out again as it goes towards the back. We want to eliminate this texture stretching as much as we can. So we're going to have to go in and edit our UVs to get the result that we're after. Another great visualization that we have is this third button inside of our toolbar up here. This guy. So we have just the outline of our UVs, we have colored UV islands, and this third one is going to show us the distortions. It's going to show us the areas of the mesh that are getting wildly warped. And as we cruise across it, it makes a little bit sense. Where it's red, we're getting a lot of stretching, an area that we need to resolve. Where it's white, we're doing okay. And blue is where we're getting very little distortion. So it's kind of a gradient. It goes from red to blue. Blue is good, red is very warped. Now, if you examine this front leg, yeah, check it out. We get a lot of warping down here at the bottom, some significant warping in the middle, or excuse me, I misspoke. Some significant warping where it's red, some moderate warping where it's white, and then where it's blue up here, it's looking pretty good. Now, if we compare that to the leg that we were working on earlier over here, yeah, it's kind of nice and uniform for the most part, and that's what we're after. Let's focus our attention on the head, because that requires some additional energy and maybe a different recipe of UV seams to get the result that we're after. The distortions is giving us a really great visualization as to where we should begin to do all of our edits. And here in the ear itself, there's a lot going on in there, a lot of distortion, so we should fix that. Also, in the snout, there's also a tremendous amount of distortions happening in there, and it makes sense. We have a big head that's being ironed into one flat circle. Let's maybe change the location of some of our UV seams to get a better result. All right, let's do it real fast. I'm going to go back into my UV editor here. I'm going to turn, just for the temporarily, I'm going to turn off my distortions just to make it a little bit easier for me to see the edges of my UVs. And I think what I'm going to do here is begin to experiment with some different seam placement for my model itself. Now I'm going to leave the check pattern on because the check pattern does a really great job of defining some of the warping and distortions. Look down underneath. This is the number 0, and it's being wildly warped and distorted at the bottom of the mesh itself. So let's fix that. Usually where we have a big distortion like this, the computer is telling us that it can't figure out how to iron out all of these polygons to make them match and to make them look how they appear inside of our three-dimensional scene. Because ultimately, we want to have this polygon here be the exact same size, scale, and proportion as the polygon that shows up in the UV map. Right now, it's not doing that. So let's go in and fix it with our 3D cut and sew tool. And I'm going to go in and just very quickly here. There we go, just making sure that I'm got all my UVs selected. Select my UVs, looking good. We can turn off the grid pattern just for a second. And I'm going to go in with my 3D cut and sew tool, and I'm going to add an edge that runs up the bottom here. Yeah, I want to have it go right about there. That way I can start flattening this out a little bit. You see this often. You see a seam that runs down the front of our character. And that's a good place to hide a seam. Underneath the chin, you're not going to see very often. It's kind of rare for someone to completely arch way back and to expose that seam. There's going to be a lot of natural shadowing in that area. Great place to hide a seam. Now, in addition, to make it easier, I'm also going to extend that seam outwards just a little bit. I've learned this from experience. This is a good place to go. Just kind of a little T shape underneath the chin. That's a great strategy. Now, with that in tow, let's unwrap it one more time and see what we get. Back to the selection tool, going to select the UV island, and then with all of those UVs selected, let's run the unfold command, under the modified pull down menu. And you can see the result of this. It's starting to flatten itself out, but intelligently. Let's compare the results. Yeah, we get a seam in there, but now we're not getting that massive distortion and warping that we saw before. So this was a good place to begin our edits. I'm okay with this seam. You're going to have to find the correct location for all of the seams in your model. And we're also not getting that wild distortion on the snout anymore as well. If we turn on the distortion visualization, now it's looking better. Now it was bright red before, now it's just a little bit red. It's a little pinkish. So a step in the right direction. Okay, let's fix a couple more things. And I think I'm going to start working with the ears a little bit, because the ears need some attention. They're getting a lot of distortions and warping in that part of the mesh. Let's see if we can minimize that a little bit by beginning to add some additional seams in here. Select the UVs, return to the 3D Cut and Sew tool, and now what I think I'm going to do is that I'm going to add an extra seam that runs kind of right in there. When it comes to faces, I always kind of imagine this as kind of like a mask. Have it go that way and then over into the ear loop as well. Now what's that going to get us? Imagine this is like a rubber mask. In order to get this rubber mask on this character's head, there's going to have to be a seam that runs up and down the back so that they can stretch and pop it over the character. That's what I see in my mind, in my imagination at least. Let's experiment and explore how this is going to have an impact on the final result of the unfold step. Let's grab this guy. We're going to unfold it one more time. Modify pull down menu. Unfold. Haha, look at that. Let's turn on our grid pattern and see what we get. Let's also turn on the visualization of our distortions, and we're starting to iron it out. We're still getting some red hot distortions on the tippy top of the ears, so we have some decisions in there that we need to make. So let's talk about solutions to this decision. Do we want to have the ears be their own polygonal island? Maybe. We could certainly do that. We could mark 3D Cut and Sew just right around the ears, pop them out into their own shape. That might solve some of the distortions themselves. Do we care about the distortions in that area? There's going to be a lot of visual information going on in the ear itself. The fur is going to get kind of erratic. There's going to be some natural shadowing in the cavities of the ears that might kind of hide some of these texture warping and distortions. So we have to kind of ask our own, kind of come to our own conclusions if it is worth it or not to pop the ears out into their own UV island. I don't have an answer for it, and I really don't know. I would experiment with this a little bit more and just see what I get. I can always go back in, unmark all the seams, unwrap the model again, and go from there. The UV unwrapping tools inside of Maya allow for an experimentation with the placement of our seams and the creation of all of these UV islands. So analyze your mesh, look for the distortions, and then find creative solutions to resolving all of those distortions in your UVs.